Okay, so we're looking at, this is the wood texture we just finished, and now we're on to texture and more texture. As a review, we're looking at the wood grain and how you use your blending stub. And I'm trying to do a dub over here, so I hope I don't mess this up. This is the heartwood, the interior of the tree. And then when you see it in perspective as a plank, a wood plank, and showing the heartwood in the center. All right, so we're going to move on to looking at reflected light and how we can actually show reflected light with using just a pen and ink. This, of course, is in pencil, but it's as though I've only got a pen and ink. I cannot add values much to it. So in this case, you can see where I actually drew the actual shape of that reflected light. You do that only when you have no other option. In this case, I'm going to show that there's reflected light by using a diagonal line across strategic places on it, so you don't lose the image, but you still, it looks as though something's in front. So it represents a flash of light in front of the object. So like a glass plane between us and it. And you don't want to obscure the image. And a lot of artists will use this in like comic strips and stuff like that, so you're going to see it. And it is very rarely done horizontally or vertically. It's going to be done diagonally. And down here, now we're playing with the idea of an eraser, using the eraser. And this is if you're actually working in pencil. And so we're going to use the eraser as a marking tool to create reflected light. And I'm just going to take a notch right there. That same shape that I did was like a little backwards comma. And I'm just creating a flash of light on the apple with my eraser. And now I'm going to create that glass plane between us and the object by slightly erasing parts of the apple, just like I did with the black line. So it then appears as though we are looking through a plane of glass into an area where there's an apple sitting. So that's basically reflected light. Now we'll move on to something that's very important to the next project that we're going to be working on, and that's what happens when you use horizontal and vertical lights on a cylinder. And I figured with 2020 we would look at, we'll use a toilet paper roll. So we've got a toilet paper roll, and what does the toilet paper this cylinder look like in space? And so one thing I want you to see is that it has a curve at the bottom. And you can see when we draw that from now on, anytime you're drawing a cylinder, you're going to make sure that you have the curve represented. And it's as though we're seeing both the top and the curve at the bottom. It's a little tight here, so I'm trying to get it where you can see both the top and the bottom. So now you can see that curve in the opening and at the bottom. If I get it where you can actually, there we go. You're going to see that curve at the bottom, and that is the illusion of it sitting on a table. And so that's what I've drawn in front of you here without the hole. So we have horizontal lines, and I did draw some lines on here. These are 1/2-inch marks, and they are all equal. And you can hold them vertically, which is what I'm doing now. And we're going to take the toilet paper roll and I'm going to wrap horizontal lines around the toilet paper roll so that you can see what actually happens when horizontal lines go around something that's a cylinder. All right, let me get in my hand here. All right, awkward, there we go. All right, what I want you to see is how that line curves, and all of them appear to curve and actually kind of go around the object. You actually see them going around the object, the cylinder. You see the curve on this side. And that is something, whether you can actually perceive it or not, I need you to know that that is the way you're going to draw it from here on out. Now, if we look at it straight on, you can see the lines in the center are straight at us, and as you go up, they curve. So they're curving. Straight on. It appears to go straight across. All right, so let's just draw that now. Now we have a good idea. We're going to do the horizontal lines on a cylinder. And first of all, I'm going to think about what if this was, say, a can or that had a label on it. What would the label do? Well, it would follow the form. The form is a curve, so we're going to curve that with a vertical line representing the edge of the label that's not going around. And then I'm just going to add those curved lines so that you will see that it helps to make the shape become the cylinder. It'll make it look three-dimensional. So we're adding in the shadows using the curved line. And sometimes it's difficult to get that curve, so you got to really consciously think about it, otherwise you'll end up with straight lines across there. Now I'm working on the other side, just kind of there. See, there's a straight line or a diagonal. It's not enough of a curve, so I would have to go back and kind of straighten those or turn them more. Now we're dealing with a light source. If a light source comes in on an actual opening on a cylinder, it's going to cast a shadow. It's going to cast light on the opposite side. So where we have a shadow on one side of the cylinder, we're going to have a shadow on the interior of the cylinder. I'm just showing those lines, still continuing to curve. So there we go. We've got horizontal lines going around a cylinder. So this is something you're going to memorize from here on out. This is something I expect to see. But what happens when you take vertical lines and you go around a cylinder? So here we have vertical lines and our cylinder. And you can see they're all equal. So I'm wrapping them around. And when they're equal, but yet something's happened here. The ones in the front are wider than the ones on either side of it. And it seems like each time they get skinnier. And eventually, the more lines you have, the more it appears to stack back on itself. So you will get closer and closer as it wraps around. So we know it's straight, we know they're all equal, and yet here's the illusion that is created. And we still see the curve. All right, so now we got to draw that. All right, so I'm going to start with the center line. Center line is putting in two lines. And then I'm going to try to get closer. And then closer. And then it's just eventually I'm just going to kind of stack them back on each other, like hard to tell what's what. All right. And so you notice I'm kind of deepening the shadow on that side. You can do that on both sides. This side, that center line is darker. And again, now we're dealing with that light source again. So I'm going to bring the light source in. And again, same thing. Cylinder, the light source is going to cast a shadow on the interior on that side, and I'll put light on the opposite side. And then I'm just going to try to throw some vertical lines in there. So that's what happens when you have vertical lines. And I think I'm going to do a cast shadow here. Cast shadow on that side. And that just creates a finished piece. That object is sitting, that cylinder is sitting on a table, on a surface. All right, now we're moving on to a water bubble from the side. And we have got the examples here. And if you'll look, you can see that the interior of the actual bubble itself casts a shadow. So right there, I'm pointing out that there's a cast shadow from the object itself. The interior of the bubble also casts a shadow, so it's kind of dark in that top area, but that is definitely a cast shadow from that bubble. There's the little darker area inside the bubble. And then that area right there is showing that the light reflects inwards, and you'll notice that the interior of a bubble is going to be lighter. So in this kid's hand, you've got the hand is actually in shadow, but because the light is reflecting inside the bubble, you're going to get even the hand is lit up a little bit in there. So even though you can see the shadow, it's lit up. And then the bubble itself is casting a shadow, so you can see that. And then there's like where the light is magnified. There's your cast shadow, magnified light. And reflected light, there it is, a little flash of light that we can use with our eraser. And you'll notice that the interior blue is actually lighter. So again, it's lit up. So whenever you're doing it, you can see that on the green leaf as well. The interior is lighter than the leaf itself. So we're going to play with that idea. So here we have, I'm going to go ahead and put, because we want to work with our 4 values. Oh, nope, we're going to look at an actual bubble. So we're looking at the cylinder itself. Because we're not looking straight down on the bubble, we're actually looking at it from a diagonal. So this is straight down, but we're going to go from the side. So we have to know, there it is, the side. And okay, so now we're going to, I'm just going to take that and I'm going to flip it over so you think of it as a bubble. And you can see as I rotate it in space, it appears to be going down to an oval. And so that's what I'm going to draw on my paper. So if I saw it straight down, it would be round. And if I see it on the side, it's going to be an oval. So I'm drawing an oval. And then I'm going to give the top part, I'm going to bring it above that line of the leaf edge. So that gives me more stuff to see through. And it's just like with the apple, I wanted more things there to see. And I'm going to go ahead, and the edge of the bubble is seen. It's not a black line. It's actually darker behind it. So it actually makes it more three-dimensional if I can get rid of the black line that is the edge of the bubble. So I'm going to get rid of that by simply coloring behind it. And I'm using dark values, the darkest values I can get. I'm thinking about, what I'm doing there. And then I'm going to take that and actually make my leaf green. And I'm coloring it, actually, I'm making a mistake here. I should be coloring with the form itself, and yet here I am going crazy and coloring diagonally across that leaf, and I'm going to have to fix that because, I don't know, I got crazy there. I should be following the form itself, and here in a moment I'm going to realize that. There we go. Now I'm following the form. Should have been following the form. Now I got to make all kinds of corrections. I got to clean that up. You try not to go across your form. Follow your form. You'll be a lot happier. Now I'm going to deal with the interior. Yes, I'm going to color that bubble. But you remember I said, oh, shoot, that's a little dark. So I'm going to actually darken the leaf. So I'm going to darken the leaf there so that you can see that the interior of the bubble is lighter. Put a little bit of, yes, it is dark back there, so I'm going to put a little shadow in that, but I don't want to lose it completely. And I think that's bugging me, so I'm going to get rid of it. And because I'm dubbing over, I have no idea what I was actually saying. But we're going to figure it out here. All right. Now, I do need some value in there. I just don't want it as dark, so I'm just going to barely tap some in. Yes, the bubble at this point is disappearing. We're going to get it back because we're going to deal with cast shadows. So right now I'm going to put a cast shadow on the interior because the interior bubble edge does cast a tiny shadow on the leaf on the inside. And then we have a larger, darker shadow cast by the whole bubble itself. So I have a light source. And then I'm going to take my eraser and I'm going to do that little backwards comma, and I'm just going to flick across it and create a highlight on the bubble. However, it's very important that you cross strategic places on there so that you can recognize. So crossing that back line and the the interior line is going to make a big difference on how we perceive that as being a bubble, reflected light. And you could add lots of value in here. You can go back in and add lots of texture. You could play with that leaf. But that's your basic bubble formula. Cast shadow. Coloring with the leaf. All right. Let's see what else we're going to do here now. Oh, now we're going to look at gingham check. The old picnic. Gingham check comes in many colors. Reds, blues, greens, purples, oranges, yellows. They're beautiful. But the red check is the one we recognize the most. And so we're going to actually do that texture. A gingham check. All right. So it's really not as hard as it looks. So we got to get set up. We know there's red plaid going. There's like stripes of red and there's stripes of white, and they are alternating. So, and then there's a black line. All right, so here we go. I'm just going to lay in a value, a medium value of red. This is going to represent red. And we'll skip a space to represent the white value, or the white part of the plaid. Skipping a space, doing it again. So this is our red going vertically. All right. And because that's starting to look like a wood grain, I'm going to have to use my blending stub. I kind of clean it up a little bit here. Get that blending stub and actually get rid of the wood grain, kind of smooth it down so it's not quite so, because this is supposed to represent fabric. So I'm just going to smooth all that color down. All right, now we're going horizontally across here, and of course I have to turn my paper. It makes it easier on me to color. That represents my red stripe going across the other red, going opposite direction. And wherever the two cross, when it's actually being in the loom, those two reds mix together and make a darker red. And so you're going to have to go back and deal with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in and I'm going to smooth out again. But I've kind of lost where the two make together and are darker. But right now it's a good cross check. I go in and try to get that darker value. So I'm just going to take my pencil and darken those areas. And right now what we're doing is we're taking this project and we are just learning the textures. You're learning how to do them so that in the future you can use it on our actual project. So if you like doing the gingham check, it's pretty easy. You'll see this in a moment. It's pretty effective and it's pretty easy. And if you like doing it, I would say use it on the project. So you're going to be required, we've already done all that hair, now you're going to be required to pick five that you really like. All right, here we got it. I'm darkening, I'm kind of blending in so that that red and red mixes and makes a darker red. And now I'm going to put the black line in. So right down the middle of the white is a black line. And now I'm going to take my eraser and I'm going to lighten up. And if you can get a really sharp, or like your eraser is new, it really helps. What mine is, I'm just putting it on the side and I'm just erasing down the middle of the black area. So I'm creating a white line down the middle of the, what, not black, but actually considered to be the red or the darker value. And then right down going horizontally. Got a little crazy there. Got to get the hang of erasing. Make sure you know your eraser edge when you go to do this, and you'll be fine. There she is. Done. That's gingham check. And our picnic plaid. Now, if we wanted to do other plaids, many plaids come in different kinds. There's the tartan plaid, which is Scottish, and then you've got all kinds of plaids. So you can be represented by just lines crossing each other. So we might start with another one. Well, I'm not going to take all your time, so I'm just going to show you. Ta-da! There it is. So I've done dark, dark, with a line dark, and then I want to cross it, same pattern, and then I hit it with a white line, and then I went in and did little tiny boxes on all the little white areas. So that's just another kind of plaid. And they're real easy to do. So as long as you come up with a pattern, thick line, thin line, thick line, thin line, and you've got a pattern going, you're set. I just don't want this to go crazy and slide while I'm working, so I'm going to glue it down. All right, next, we're going to work with, basket weave, yay. This one's really neat looking. You can see it looks like it's one area is over another. So the way we start that is we just do horizontal lines, representing the basket going horizontally. And then we put in our vertical lines. Basket part going vertical. Horizontal, opposite of the vertical, and then wherever putting the vertical in, where the opposite of the horizontal. So we just keep going like that, and eventually you have this happening. And then you've got to go in and throw in your shadows. So where that one is crossing under, I'm going to put a little shadow there. And I'm going to put that texture in. And then right under here, I'm going to go a little darker because it's going under. And where this one's crossing and it's going under, I'm going to put the shadow right there. Shadow on the other side as it comes back out. All right, crossing it wherever they overlap. You just got to pay attention to where it's going. As long as you're keeping it in your mind that this is going under this edge, that's going under that edge, then you can keep working it and, you know, just get a little dark spot there. And you just keep going. And that's the basket weave. Pretty easy. All right, another one of my favorites is dealing with a fabric. Oh no, we're going to do we're going to do rope. So what we're going to do is we're going to do every other, either like alternating dots to represent rope. All right, once you have that, you just bring them together on either side. And then you cross over. And I'm going to extend that one. Out there. And then you just think about, how do my shadows work? So if that one's on top, then this one's in shadow. That one's on top, this one's in shadow. And you just put in your texture of your actual rope and your shadows in. And they're alternating because the light source is always usually coming from the same place. So I'm just putting in my texture. And the shadow, and there you go. And I went in there, I felt like it needed a little darker edge, I guess. So we have the step 1 is the dots, 2 is the outer loops, and then 3 is the diagonal, and then you put in your textures and your actual shadows. All right, now we're dealing with Paisley. I love Paisley. I thought we were going to Paisley earlier. All right, so we've got Paisley. And basically, it's like a yin-yang shape, or you might call it a teardrop, but you just basically, they would go different directions. They can overlap. Here I am not going to overlap. I'm just going to make 3 different ones. But I also deal with the fact that this could be fabric, and so it's going off the page. It's going out of that area, and you're going to continue to see a pattern that's going to continue. And that's going to be important with the project, remembering to continue that pattern, not just stop it. Now we're going on the interior, following the form. And then you can play with what's on the inside of that. So a lot of times it's flowers, and I'm just going to keep it real simple. An interior bubbly thing going on here all the way around. And you would do these, repeating the pattern is important with Paisley. So you could do square ones, you could do triangles. Interior could be diamonds. I had students doing specific images over the years in those spots, and then you could do something out here that might be floating or part of the design. Don't forget that it goes off the page. So I did decide that I wanted mine to be darker, so I went with the dark value, because again, you're supposed to be getting 3 to 4 values on all of these patterns or all these designs. So every one of the textures must show that. And you can see I've got, I'm going to grab some of that graphite, and I'm just going to color in the interior, creating another value. Adding interest. You can imagine how pretty these would be if you're adding actual color. But in this case, I'm asking you to work in your pencil, as I think it's important to learn the pencil before you mess with color. And just, you can overlap where these were not overlapping. They can go in any direction. And that's Paisley. Now we're going to play with one more. And that's going to be camo. There it is. Camouflage. Camouflage is strange. It's supposed to break up the human form, or so that animals cannot recognize, or even humans recognize, that human shape is, or form is in the woods. So we break it up like organic shapes. And so it is the, like branches, water, sticks. It's supposed to be represented of nature, just all these different organic forms. And eventually you want to use at least 3, if not 4, values to deal with the camo. And this one's done. So I've got really dark values. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 values basically. And I can even lighten up an area. So I can count that as even 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 even. So I would like you to duplicate what you're seeing here